I think it's working. Okay. I did a test about a month ago to kind of make sure that I was doing it correctly. So hopefully that test was worth its weight in gold. But if not, I can always just start it again. I kind of think to myself, don't get too hung up on the technology. You can always just take a breather and start again if it doesn't work. So, hi, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me for a couple of hours tonight. I'm going to be completely honest, I've no idea where it's going to go. I don't really have any stringent plan because I feel like quite a lot of the videos that I've made so far and the videos that are coming up, there's a point to them, there's a plan to them. I'm outlining specific things that I think it's pertinent to talk about. I've already got in my mind, what's kind of important, what's on the agenda. So I felt like for the live session, we could really just be spontaneous and see where it goes. So yeah, I'm super excited. I want to start by saying that it is the new moon tonight, which is why I decided to do this live session tonight. I connect most prominently with the energies of the new moon, or the dark moon as it's also called. I really kind of tend to feel that it's the time when we really can invite new beginnings and allow ourselves to kind of make plans and enforce the changes we want to make, settle on fresh principles, decide where things haven't been going so well, and kind of put up other things into the mix. The new moon is popularly a time that's associated with magic, to do with laying the strong foundations, planting the seed, that kind of stuff, and allowing it to come to fruition on the full moon. The full moon this month is the 28th of September, and this month is the harvest moon, which I think is so appropriate for a talk about self-love, the harvest moon, thinking about reaping what we're sowing and taking accountability and taking the lead in our lives. In fact, I just a couple of hours ago did my recording for Self-Love Sunday on SoundCloud. It's not up yet because actually I realized that I have reached my upload limit and I needed to go unlimited. So I've only just kind of gotten to grips with that and what that means and stuff. So I'm going to need to actually I'm going to need to go back to SoundCloud after this finishes and kind of upload the recording. So it's not recorded. I mean, it's not available, but I did record it. And during that recording that I just made, Take the Lead came up from the Psychic Tower of the Heart Oracle. So that's really cool. Take the Lead. I love that. And I really think the harvest moon connects wondrously with that energy. If anybody knows how to turn around so I don't have a mirror image, let me know, because that would be great, because I've just noticed that everything's backwards and this is something that I did not consider before I started, and I am going to be using cards. I feel really drawn to use cards. In fact, I've got the Rider-Waite on hand and cracked open, ready to use. I've got the Psychic Tarot Oracle for the heart, cracked open and ready to use, and I've also got Earth Magic Oracle and Vintage Wisdom Oracle available too. So I really felt like oracle decks more than tarot decks kind of made sense for this more free-flowing, intuitive arrangement where I'm just going to talk about whatever comes into my mind. I will be regularly checking the Q&A comments segment. So yeah, ask me questions, make comments. You need to go onto Google Hangouts to do that. There should be, if you're watching this on YouTube, there should be something in the bottom left or bottom right that allows you to click to come over onto Google Hangouts, where you can, if you are connected to Google Plus, ask me questions or leave comments. If one of you wants to go ahead and do something like that, so I can make sure that the question and comment section is actually working, that would be great, just to make sure that I can see and that I will be able to respond to your comments and your questions and stuff, because I kind of feel like if I can't do that, then I really will need to start this session again because that's kind of the point, is for it to be interactive, or as interactive as possible. So yeah, I'm going to be here for the long haul. I'm going to be here until 10 o'clock. So I kind of wanted to get started first of all by talking about what the new moon can offer to us in terms of the energies that are coming forward. I follow the lunar phases, and the lunar cycle is very important to me, and it's very important to what I do. And I quite often time spiritual things, rituals, etc., around different phases of the lunar calendar. And I take a look at what phase of the moon I'm going to need in order to do certain kinds of magic or certain kinds of ritual, that kind of stuff. And I also like to take note of when certain feelings and emotions are coming up in me, what is the lunar cycle saying and doing at that point? Because quite often it's really interesting to me how I get certain kinds of feelings always on the full moon, or certain kinds of feelings always on the new moon, and kind of various different stages of the lunar cycle in between. So I make note of when my emotions are being affected by the lunar cycle, as well as how I can use the lunar cycle to take the lead in my own life in many ways. So the reason that I chose to do this during the new moon is because I feel like for quite a lot of people that are coming to Self-Love September in a really conscious way, it is about making changes that are going to be lasting. And it's about planting seeds now that are going to go on way after the month of September is over. I've spoken already about how important it is to me that I stress and that I get to grips with the fact that I don't do Self-Love September because I think we should only focus on self-love for the month of September. I just do it so that it is like that. It's like a hit, you know, for the whole month. It is what we're focusing on as the priority in our self-development and in our spiritual work. But the idea is that Self-Love September is like that almost self-love overdose. It's where we absolutely commit, and then the tools that we take on and the realizations that we have can then last us for the rest of the year. So it's kind of like many witches and many spiritual types will save their shadow work for the coldest month of the year, or the darkest month of the year when the sun rises the latest and the sun sets the soonest, you know, because it just seems appropriate. It seems pertinent for the dark half of the year, for the colder part of the year. And I think similarly for me, like September, Self-Love September was kind of an accident. It came up as the result of me just sitting around one day thinking, you know, what kind of content do I want to make next month? And I thought, you know, self-love September, yeah, that'd be cool, that'll work. But actually it's come to the point now where I kind of think that it's going to go on in that vein, and it's going to be a time when we can actually bring our focus back to self-love and have a look at what went in from last year, what tools we need for this year, what we've experienced in the year from September to September. And so I kind of think that correlates beautifully with the new moon, because the new moon does have a fresh start kind of vibe to it, and it does give us this very important sense of potential. The new moon is really about potential, and I feel for me the new moon is also about alignment. The dark moon is a result of the earth and the sun and the moon aligning completely, and that's why we can't see the moon during the new moon, because it's being illuminated by the sun on the other side, and so actually it's taking out our ability to see it whatsoever. I love that fact. I love the fact that the new moon is about the alignment of the three. So yeah, I feel it's about realization. I feel it's about jigsaw pieces clicking into place. And my feeling is that I hope that there are tools for everybody who follows along with Self-Love September that will allow things to click into place for them. So if you're watching this, I just hope that there have been one or two things, or there will be one or two things that will click into place for you. And I think that will be absolutely marvelous. I'll be so happy with that. Okay, I've opened up the Q&A. So let's have a little look. Why are you so beautiful? Asks Natalie. Why are you so beautiful, Natalie? That's the question. Okay. Oh, okay. So somebody's saying that the image doesn't look reversed to them. Okay, so it only looks reversed to me, but it doesn't look reversed to you because you're looking on the other side of the technology. Don't you just love it? Oh, I'm so excited then. That's absolutely fine. Okay, so it's only going to be problematic for me because I'm looking at it and being like, oh. But as long as it doesn't look reversed to you, that's absolutely fine. Thank you so much for letting me know. That's really, really cool. I'm really glad this is working. I did do a test. I did a test last month, and some people that were randomly scrolling through YouTube came along and just had a chat with me for an hour. If you're one of those people, thanks for keeping me company. That was so much fun. When I was messing around with all the little faces and stuff, that was just beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna answer some questions. So the Autistic Witch, that's a great name, asks, do you find that you have a yearly mood cycle? It's a really, really good question. Yeah, I do. You know what? I experience triggers. That's what happens to me. So like there are certain times of year where the smell in the air will be a certain way, and the weather is a certain way, right? And the sunsets look a particular kind of way. And it reminds me of a year in the past. It either reminds me of the previous year, or it reminds me of ages ago. The smell will just trigger me, and I'll think about when I was 8 and I was on holiday somewhere, or when I was like 14 and it was a particular kind of time at school and I had a particular friend and we would go and hang out in this particular place. I get triggered. So I'm really interested in how my five senses respond to the changing year. That's really interesting to me. The main thing that gets affected for me by the yearly cycle is my spirituality. And I think this is true for a great many witches, a great many people who have spiritual practice. It's about the spirituality and how that changes. Through the summer months, through the hotter months, I don't tend to actually do so much spiritually. I do have access to transpersonal experiences, which is wondrous because I'm outside a lot more of the time. But I don't tend to feel really called to do full-on rituals. I don't tend to feel as called to connect with deity. When it gets to around the time of Mabon, however you want to call it, that's when things start to kick off for me. And I've noticed that if I'm ever having a spiritual slump, it will be the time of the autumn equinox that my book of mirrors and my book of shadows will start to pick up again in terms of entries. So when I look back over my book of mirrors and my book of shadows from previous years, and I see that I've really dwindled with my spiritual thoughts and my spiritual practices during summer, it's amazing how at autumn equinox kind of time it picks up. And then by the time of Samhain and then on into winter solstice, I'm just writing absolutely tons. So that is how it affects me most prominently, is my mood in terms of spirituality. I find that the colder months speak to that much more and just give me this really profound sense of spiritual longing. So that's how it works for me. Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. So hopefully that was an interesting answer. I hope. That's all I can hope. Okay. So okay, so this is another one from the Autistic Witch. Hi again. I found that I get depressed every year in March. I'm in the US, so March is springtime. I feel energized in the fall. Okay, so we have a similar kind of thing in terms of feeling energized during the colder months. It's interesting. I think a lot of people associate spring with vitality and with joy and all the rest of it. But I think quite often for witches and alternative spiritual peeps, it is fall and winter for so many of us that just feel like we're just more at home there, you know. Oh, that test was gorgeous. Yeah, that test was fun. That was that was really fun. I should just do more random things like that. I was thinking now that I've gotten the hang of Google Hangouts, I will do that. Oh, right, somebody else is asking if I can show the card. Is that mirrored to you guys, or can you see that the right way around? Let me know. Okay, so let's go on into some self-love stuff. I was thinking maybe we could begin with the topic of forgiveness and release, just letting go, extracting the lesson and kind of getting rid of the baggage, getting rid of the processing the pain and getting rid of what's left over, what's not useful, what we can't kind of do anything with. I think forgiveness is something that comes up because so many people have struggles with self-love and self-acceptance and self-worth because of things that have occurred at the hands of other people, because of abuse, because of manipulation, because of deceit, and all these kinds of things. So we talk about forgiveness in terms of release and in terms of letting go. Now, your mileage will vary in relation to what the word forgiveness means to you. I think one of the key problems with talking about forgiveness in terms of self-love is the fact that semantically, you know, the word forgiveness, what it means, what it implies, is somewhat kind of like debatable. Different people feel different things about it. You've got to remember that some people were raised in a religious setting and have some kind of unpleasant associations with the word forgiveness and with what it means. For some people, forgiveness is linked intrinsically to the other person requesting forgiveness, or to the other person, you know, to handing forgiveness to the other person. Whereas to other people, there's this philosophy of, well, forgiveness is for me, it's not for the other person. You know, the other person doesn't need to be sorry in order for me to forgive them. There's also a question of the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. You know, the difference between forgiving and forgetting, almost. I feel that I can forgive without having to reconcile. I feel that I have done some of my most meaningful and some of my most profound work with forgiveness when I have known that I was never going to speak to the person again, and that it was kind of so that I didn't have to carry the weight of it around with me anymore, so that I wasn't directing malice at them and therein having it mirrored back at me as well. So I really think it takes for you to check in with what forgiveness means for you and where forgiveness is on your journey of self-love. And this is something that I wanted to start by saying, because I just feel that that is so intrinsic to most of the stuff that I say about self-love, and most of the stuff that I say about anything, is that the journey is personal to you, and you might hear some of what I say and it might resonate, and it might, you know, make a light switch go off in your head, and it might be like, oh, I never thought of it like that. And then other things that I say you'll probably feel very resistant towards or very challenged by, or you'll feel like, I don't really, that doesn't really make sense to me, and it's not my paradigm at all. I would never expect anybody to take everything that I say in a video wholesale. I think it's really important to check in with your personal narrative, with your personal journey. And for you, forgiveness may mean something different to what it means to me. For me personally, forgiveness was a key part of my process of self-love, forgiving my transgressors, releasing the feelings that I had about my detractors, about the people who undermined me, who manipulated me, who bullied me, who hurt me in some way, has been a key part of what it means to recognize that the experiences that I've had in my life, the situations and relationships that have gone awry or that have affected me in a way that feels negative, can be reframed and can be reworked so that they are an epic part of my hero's journey, so that they are part of the filigree, part of the lattice work that makes up the essential meaning of what it is to be me and have my experiences. So for me, it is about post-traumatic growth, and it's about reframing what's happened, and forgiveness is a part of that. I do not feel that forgiveness has anything to do with reconciliation necessarily. I think it's really important to recognize that you can forgive somebody and ultimately decide not to have them in your life due to the need for self-preservation and due to your own sense of self-respect. It's important to recognize that forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. And actually, one of the most self-loving things that I have done in my life is to recognize that other people feel very, very differently about that. And some people at certain points in my life have tried to force me to reconcile with somebody and talk to somebody again whom I had professed to forgive but didn't want to speak to. And because I said, look, I'm done with that person. I'm done with that person. They're out of my life. I forgive them. I bless them on their journey. I don't hold the malice anymore because I've processed it, but I don't want that person in my life anymore. And unfortunately, the person who was trying to get me to have a dialogue with this transgressor would turn around and say, well, you're obviously not healed if you don't want to talk to that person. So people have very different ideas of what forgiveness is. A lot of people connect forgiveness with reconciliation, with making up, with keeping the person in your life. I don't. And I don't think that's a spiritual perspective. I don't think that's necessarily the most spiritual perspective on it. I think forgiveness can be given whether the person is sorry, whether the person is deceased, whether the person has requested your forgiveness or not, whether the person ever has a chance in hell of being in your life again or not. Forgiveness is given so that you don't carry that weight. You know, that thing about, you know, being angry and holding on to your anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I realized that I was drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And that's why I started forgiving. I started forgiving so I could free up my soul for other things, for the pursuit of art, for the pursuit of higher levels of spiritual and ritual and magical excellence, for the pursuit of other relationships that were more in keeping with the life that I wanted to have at that time, you know? So I think it's really important to look at what forgiveness means for you and how forgiveness can serve you. I think about forgiveness the same way that I think about anger. I don't necessarily feel that in order for anger to be expressed and processed, it needs to be directed at the person to whom you are angry with or towards the situation that you're angry about. I feel like it can be expressed spiritually and creatively. It can be expressed in terms of an artistic endeavor. It doesn't need to be expressed. You know, if I'm angry at a family member or a friend, I don't have to direct my anger at them. In fact, I can process it without them ever having had to be involved. If I come to a certain point in the process and I realize that I need to say certain things to the person I'm angry with in order to maintain my sense of authenticity and to ensure that I don't lose the relationship or that I'm not undermined in the relationship, fine, absolutely no problem, I will do that. But I feel like anger doesn't necessarily have to be expressed toward the person or thing that you're angry with. It can be a very personal, very introverted, very internal, very spiritual and creative journey. And it's not always the most productive thing to direct anger outwards. It isn't. And sometimes you can't direct anger outwards because you're angry at your abuser that you no longer see, or you're angry at somebody who is dead, or you're angry at somebody that you can't pick up the phone to anymore. Does that mean that you can never process your anger? No, you're going to go ahead and process it. And it's the exact same thing with forgiveness. The other person doesn't need to be involved. The other person doesn't need to be sorry. Um, the other person doesn't even need to be around. I have forgiven people that have walked out of my life long ago, long before. And to me, it doesn't really matter whether or not they requested forgiveness. And the other thing that I hear about forgiveness, let me just touch on this briefly before I answer some questions and move on. The other thing that I hear about forgiveness quite a lot is that forgiveness is judgment, and that it's really important to avoid all judgment, and therefore, realize that you have no right to forgive anybody, because if you're forgiving them, then you're judging them. But I don't believe that necessarily. I feel like, for me, forgiving certain people who have crossed me, who have hurt me, who have deceived me, is the releasing of judgment, or at least the releasing of the negative side of judgment, because I don't think discernment is bad. And I don't think that judging somebody as a person that I do want or don't want in my life is bad. I think it's absolutely important and essentially human to do that. But in terms of the negative crap, in terms of the superiority, in terms of lording it up over somebody, in terms of deciding that they're wrong and I'm right, or they're bad and I'm good, I feel like forgiving was the releasing of that negative stuff. It was the releasing of the judgment, not the hanging on to it. The forgiving was the accepting and the acknowledging, that we're human, and that I don't want to carry that baggage, and I shouldn't have to carry that baggage. I don't want to be wasting my precious energy directing it like that, holding on to that bitterness and letting it rot, So yeah, I think for me personally, forgiveness is not about holding on to those negative judgments and that sense of superiority. It's about releasing it. It's before I've forgiven that I feel I'm hanging on to that stuff. And once I get into the process of forgiveness, that's when I'm releasing it. And one more final thing I want to say about forgiveness is that it is like a light switch. And I know it's not like a light switch, sorry. And I know I've said that before. I think it was a passage in The Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes that kind of switched me on to this idea of forgiveness coming in degrees. I think it was in that book anyway. I think right at the end, she says something about how forgiveness comes in degrees, and you might forgive somebody like 80%, and then you might find that it goes down to 60%, and then you might find that you've got some stuff to deal with and it goes down significantly more, and then it goes up again. It's not a light switch. It doesn't just come on one day. And so I think that's kind of important to know. And it's important for your sense of emotional well-being and mental well-being that you recognize that forgiveness isn't something that you can just switch on. It just isn't. And quite a lot of the time, if you've decided overnight that you've forgiven and you've released and you've let it go, if somebody's crossed you, if you have a transgressor, if you've been manipulated or abused or lied to, and you decide, within the process of 24 hours that you've let it go and it's fine and it's all gone, normally I think you have to question whether or not you're spiritually bypassing when you do that, because there is a process, and anger is part of that process. And you have to go through something in order to extract the lesson and in order to forgive. So it might be possible to forgive somebody in 24 hours and say it didn't affect me and it's fine. But I think a lot of the time we have to question whether or not we're bypassing, and whether or not we're actually allowing ourselves to go through the human experience as spiritual beings. That's really key, is that the human experience is not something that we should try to ascend beyond or rise above or see as ugly. The human experience does involve anger and frustration and disappointment and sadness and acceptance and sorrow and release and all of that kind of thing. So spiritual bypassing is that kind of mentality where you're like, we're all one and there's no judgment, and so there's nothing to forgive. And I often think to myself, but there's a process, surely. Is there not a process? If your husband cheated on you and left you for another woman, or somebody hoodwinked you in some way, or your business partner of 20 years screwed you over, I mean, is there a process? Surely there's a process. And that's why I think a lot of pagans sit kind of uneasy with the ascension paradigm, because I wonder, what are we attempting to ascend beyond? Because a lot of the stuff that is seen as yucky and icky and messy and human is also the stuff that helps us to get to that end point, which is so valuable, where we are truly healed. We are truly able to forgive, rather than just talking about it and rather than just lip service. So I want to mention that too, is that forgiveness does come in degrees. It doesn't come on like a light switch. It's perfectly okay to recognize that. And I do think sometimes, when you feel pressured to forgive, when you feel pressured to let go because other people around you are saying, oh, I've forgiven, I've let go, and it's not even been a week, then I would definitely say check in with yourself And if you feel that there's a process that you need to go through in order to forgive, do not feel pressured to bypass that process. Go through that process. Let other people do what they got to do, but you do you, boo. That's what I would say. That's something about forgiveness that I think is, it would be kind of irresponsible of me not to say. So that's where I think forgiveness fits into self-love. I'm going to select some things that have been left in the comments and answer them. Okay, Nymphalina. How do you pull yourself away from social media and internet and dive into creative practices? I'm finding it difficult to entertain myself with my own imagination and creative process, and instead watching YouTube or browsing social media for hours on end. Okay, one thing that I would say to you is that the internet, like YouTube videos and stuff, can actually make a great accompaniment to the creative process. So there is a way that you can factor it in. First of all, have a look at what it is that you're actually watching YouTube video wise. Ask yourself, is it healthy? Is it helpful? Is it educational in some way, or emotionally and spiritually fulfilling you in some way? Or is it just like endless makeup haul videos or something where you just feel the compounded sense that you've wasted time afterwards? You've got to be honest with yourself about that. So have a look at the kind of stuff that you're watching and the kind of stuff that you're kind of absorbing. And then for me, what I like to do is I like to sit up sometimes and make collage, just play around with images. I do a little bit of drawing, a little bit of decorating my planner, but collage mainly. And I like to watch YouTube videos then, but it will be YouTube videos that are enriching and that I really feel are serving me. So it'll be interviews with artists and writers that I like, or it will be documentaries about, different parts of psychology or spirituality or world religions, politics, that kind of thing. So there is a way that you can actually use the internet in a positive way that will accompany you and feed you while you do creative stuff. You don't need to shut it off completely in order to do creative stuff. There is a way that they can dance harmoniously together. That's something that I would say. The other thing that I would say to you is just take a look at the way that you manage your time and find some really neat ways of managing your time appropriately when it comes to social media. I use the Stay Focused app, and it's an absolute godsend for me. It's very easy for me to go onto social media to say something really specific and then end up getting lost in the social media and end up scrolling and suddenly realizing I've lost 20 minutes or half an hour or 45 minutes, reading other stuff or clicking onto articles that have been posted on Facebook. And before I know it, I'm like, it's lunchtime. So I use Stay Focused, and Stay Focused just helps you to manage your time on certain sites, and it helps you to restrict your access to certain sites. It attaches itself to your browser, and it just gives you little updates and reminds you how much time you've got left on social media. And when you're out of time, it will stop you from going on certain social media sites, and it will leave you a little note that says, shouldn't you be working right now? So it's basically like using the app, which is completely free, to be your strict guardian, your stern parent, your emperor kind of thing. So yeah, find ways to manage your time and try and look at time in a nice, constructive, helpful way. I like to use the stopwatch function on my phone and the timer function on my phone to challenge myself to get certain things done in a certain amount of time, or to time myself to see how long something is taking me. And that has really helped me to flip the script when it comes to time. It's really helped me to enjoy the challenge of using my time constructively, and to notice where my tendencies are to waste time and actually kind of do something about that. So I hope that's answered your question, and I hope that's been helpful to you. Let's grab another one. Jackie. Big energy for today's moon. I'm a Virgo, so this is hitting me head on. I feel like a lot of us are entering a new phase. I'm in particular starting a business. In what ways can we celebrate and turn over fears in going forward and finding confidence, etc.? I'm wondering if there's more to that comment, because it says WIT on the end. I'm not sure if that was, I don't think there is. Okay, so I feel like a lot of us are entering a new phase. Yeah, I feel that way as well. Yeah, I feel like there's something about shedding a skin at this kind of point. And I feel also for me, Lammas, Mabon and Samhain are about looking at what I've harvested, looking at the lessons I've learned. So it's about reflection and contemplation. It's about gathering the seeds and the crops and being like, right, what have I got? What did I manage to make? What did I fall short on? How do I feel about the process? So I think that's part of it as well. It's that harvesting, that sense of like what have I been reaping all this time, and what am I going to do with it? Where am I going to spend it now? How am I going to use it? So that's really exciting. In what ways can we celebrate and turn over fears in going forward and finding confidence? I think that's a good idea to draw a card for, because I really do want to get the cards involved. So let's draw a couple of cards. Let's have one from the Psychic Tarot Oracle for the Heart and one from Rider-Waite. I'll just cut it randomly and draw one. Ooh, Balance Reverse. Let's just turn this the right way around so you can see it. I love this. This is really cool. Don't you think that this guy has an Eric Silverman vibe to him? I just love that. And this girl has kind of Sammy Valens vibe to her. Oh my god, they're YouTube peeps in the card. This is about integration to me. This is about recognizing particularly the harmony between your feminine and your masculine energies. And in terms of confidence, that's something that's really helped me. And Jackie, you said that you are starting a business. For me, I really feel that my masculine energy has been trained, has been tamed, and has come to full potential through doing what I've done with the Four Queens. I really feel like there's aspects of my masculine energy that I would not have experienced or kind of come good with if I hadn't have been doing this, if I hadn't have been doing what I'm doing now. So it's actually an exciting time for you to recognize that your masculine and feminine energies can dance harmoniously, and that's part of what it is to be confident. True confidence kind of recognizes that you are not one version of yourself at all times. There are different energies at work. There are different beliefs at work. You sometimes will contradict yourself, and you sometimes will be paradoxical. But if you embrace your complexity, and if you recognize that there are certain kinds of energies that you can pull out of the bag at certain times, and there are certain personality traits that you can use to your advantage in certain situations, then you start to recognize yourself as a whole person. And that's a huge part of what it is to be confident. When you go forth and you work on your business, and for anybody else watching this who is about to start studying or is running a business and is taking it to that next plateau, or is about to start a project of some kind, you will witness that there are parts of yourself that have probably been lying dormant that are going to come through to the surface when you start kind of putting the pedal to the metal in this new way. And it's about noticing that and embracing that and being excited about that truly. And that's part of what it is to be confident, is to see your masculine and your feminine, or if you don't like that terminology, your yin and your yang energies, those two opposing kinds of energetic forces that are at work within you. And it's about letting them dance harmoniously and recognizing when one is necessary or when the other is necessary. For me, I kind of feel like I'm in the seat of my power when I recognize that my masculine energy and my feminine energy can combine, they can dance harmoniously, and I can choose at a given time which one is necessary, or I can notice one of them coming through. And that's a lot of what it takes to overcome fear. I also feel like, you know, there's a focus on the heart chakra with this card, which I really love. There's that glowing pink, gorgeous kind of, it's almost like a protective, like barrier, kind of a incubation thing around the heart chakra. And I love that, because I think that there's this idea that the opposite of fear is love. If you've ever read any Marianne Williamson, or you're interested in the Course in Miracles or Gabby Bernstein, then you will understand what I mean. I think overcoming fear has a lot to do with the self-talk that we give to ourselves, and the way that we allow ourselves to have our vision and to nurture ourselves as we have our vision. A lot of fear that we experience around projects that we want to get to work on, things that we want to achieve, are linked overtly to our self-talk. You know, if you're berating yourself, criticizing yourself, downplaying your strengths, telling yourself that you can't do it, telling yourself that you're an idiot when you screw something up, when you make a mistake, that stuff lends itself to fear, and it lends itself to the sense of stagnation. So I would definitely recommend focusing on your positive self-talk. When you become aware of the ways in which you're shit talking yourself, the game starts to change. It's actually very moving when that happens. It's very moving when that happens, when you start to realize, oh, I've been telling myself this for years. I've been shouting myself down like that for years. I'm always telling myself that I can't do this, or that if I screw up, people will laugh and judge, and so I should sit on the sidelines and not do it. When you start to realize that you've been saying those things to yourself, and that it's been going totally under the radar for ages, then you can catch yourself in the act. You can become conscious of it, and you can start to put a new narrative into play every time that you do that. And that's a wonderful thing. So it's really about being conscious of that self-talk. I love the idea of ritual, but I have no idea how to perform it without feeling lame. I want to feel reverent and design my own ritual. I was wondering if you have any suggestions. Natalie, I could talk all night about this, honey bunny. Absolutely, I have some suggestions. First of all, get rid of everything that you have been told that ritual is about. Release yourself from the bondage of what other people are telling you that ritual should look like and feel like. Forget everything that you think you know about what you should wear, how you should speak, what kinds of words you should use. Forget about the stuff you picked up in books. Forget about what you think other people are doing. That's the best way. That's the best way, is to start with what is powerful for you. Then start to think about the influences, the songs, the words, the poems, the TV shows, the movies, the locations, the colours, the textures, the times of year, the foods, the drinks, the art that make you feel plugged in and reverent and empowered and emboldened and alive and glorious and filled with the goddess and the god and everything beyond and everything outside and everything within. And that is what you are going to place into your ritual. That's what matters. For me, the writing of the beat poets is worth 100 times more than all this, you know, so mote it be stuff. It doesn't do anything for me. A lot of the stuff in the spell books and the ritual books and whatnot, it doesn't do anything for me. When I read the beat poets, or when I read Anne Sexton or Sylvia Plath, like, or Adrienne Rich, these female poets, they do something to me. Imtiaz Darker, oh my god, her poetry, oh, sumptuous. Selena Hill, just like, it's about recognizing what plugs you in. And for me, with words, what plugs me in is like Naked Lunch by William Burroughs, do you know what I mean, or Howl by Allen Ginsberg. And so that's where I go for my use of words, for the stuff that I write and the stuff that I read in the circle. I know that there are certain types of aesthetics that really switch me on. I'm not really a cork bark, feathers and shells type of woman. I'm much more of a sugar skulls and skeletons and tacky kind of kids' toys kind of a woman. That's the aesthetic that I love. I love Catholic iconography because I was raised in an Irish Catholic family. You know, so it's about finding what works for you, what switches you on, what plugs you in, and forgetting everything else. Ritual and the way you decorate your altar and the way that you approach your spirituality has got to be about what works for you. And that's what I would say. So explore, when was the last time you felt truly powerful? When I listened to Spell by Patti Smith, the live version, which I think was recorded in Portland, Oregon, and you can find it on YouTube. By the end of that recording, I am a fucking goddess. I feel, God, it's just the power, the power, the unmitigated power. So it's about finding the power. It's about finding what makes you feel powerful. When I listen to The Truth the Dead Know being read by Anne Sexton live, I think to myself, this woman was a witch with words. I want to be the same. Let me make like Anne. Let me write something that's going to light my circle on fire, you know? So yeah, that's what I would say about that. And it's a, you know, it's something I'm really passionate about. So I've got quite a lot of questions and comments, so I think what I'm going to do is just continue to move through them, rather than intersplice them or intersperse them with my own ideas, which is fine because I hadn't written any of my own ideas down. I started talking about forgiveness because I was thinking about it and watching some videos about it recently, but it's not something that I feel that I need to stick on, or there's nothing else that I really wanted to talk about. I wanted it to be free flowing and spontaneous, as I've written in the description. So I'm really happy that you guys want to make it as interactive as possible. This is perfect. This is what I was hoping for. I'm so excited that I might even do another one. I'm so thrilled. It's just lovely. Okay, let's have a little look at this. Look at some more comments. If you're watching the playback, then I'm sorry about all the umming and ahhing and looking at comments and reading. I mean, because I know it must be a bit slow if you're not involved live, but hopefully it's enjoyable in some way, in some sense. The regular nonsense. I'm interested in hearing your opinion of me, who is a broom closet witch, in terms of, I was raised Buddhist and I love my practice, but I really feel drawn to having a deity, even though I don't know which, and practicing witchcraft. Okay, it's not strictly on the theme of self-love, but let's just touch on it. Although I guess, like, yeah, I felt like the ritual thing was more on track with self-love, in the sense that you have to be self-loving to own your path. And so I suppose in the same way, this speaks to self-love, because you have to, it's a self-loving act, right, to get onto your own path. And so my feeling would be, you were raised Buddhist and you love your practice. It's, you know, it's possible. I'm a syncretist. I mix different pathways and I mix different systems of belief. It is very personal. You have to make your own peace with doing something like that. It's not something that I can give you permission to explore. It's something that must come from the heart center. It's something that you must give yourself permission to explore. And so far be it from me to tell you that it's easy and you should just get on with it, because of course, you know, that's not always the case. It doesn't always feel easy, right? And it doesn't always feel like something that you can get on with and do. But for now, I would suggest, if you're in the closet and you're thinking about having a deity, but you're not sure which or anything like that, I would suggest processing your feelings about your path by writing them down or recording them in some way. Try and get it out. Try and get whatever is within you out on paper or on a surface of some kind or in some kind of way, so that you can actually discover what's there. You can have a look at, for example, how your path has changed over the last few months or years, what you've really gotten so far out of your spiritual practice that you would like to find more of and that you would like to experience in different ways. Write about why it is that you think you want to invite a deity. What do you imagine getting out of it? What do you actually see when you close your eyes and you envision working with a deity? What is it that appeals to you about that? And how would you like to combine Buddhism and a deity and, you know, witchcraft? How would you like to combine those things, and how would it work for you personally? Like I said, I'm a syncretist and I don't feel the need to seek permission for that, but I think it's very personal for different people. And I was not raised under the guise of a spirituality or religion, so I can't tell you from my personal perspective how you should feel about the idea of mixing witchcraft and Buddhism, but it happens all the time. Buddhism is more of a philosophy than a religion anyway, so it can actually slot quite neatly into all kinds of different religious and spiritual practices. But that's a journey that you have to go on for yourself. But I definitely recommend writing things down, getting clear in your mind about what it is that you want, what it is that you're seeking, what it is that you've had so far in spirituality that you want more of, and how you think that witchcraft and working with a deity might enhance your journey. You know, and then just think about the fact that, look, you know, none of us are getting any younger and we're all going to fertilize daffodils one day. So you get one shot on planet as the person that you are now. Do you really want to not take the road less traveled because you have some hang-ups about it, or because you're not sure whether or not it's allowed? Or do you want to take that less traveled road and see what's down there? If it keeps calling to you, there must be a reason why, right? If it doesn't feel wrong to you, if it feels like it's going to enrich you and it's going to give you the answers you seek and it's going to illuminate you, then I would definitely ask yourself on your deathbed, will you be happy with any excuse as to why you didn't do that? Because I think for me, with my spiritual journey, I just kind of worked out that if I'm going to die one day, then I'm definitely not going to be happy lying on my deathbed thinking, well, I didn't do those certain things because I thought they were silly, or I thought they were weird, or I thought that they hadn't been done before and I couldn't do them. Actually, I decided to take the opposite road. I decided that I would let death inspire me, which is kind of a bit goth, really, but that's how it went with me. Okay. How to tear down barriers. I feel like I'm very much limiting myself, but it's so hard to step outside this cozy cocoon and be vulnerable again. Any tips? I love the way that you say cozy cocoon. Isn't that just so much what it feels like so much of the time? Yeah, definitely stepping outside the cozy cocoon. Okay, let's draw some cards. Shall we draw some cards for this? It will be so exciting and magical. Okay, let's go with the Psychic Tarot Oracle by John Holland, because I've pre-shuffled, and let's go for two. Okay. Oh wow, spread your wings and embrace. Now what you'll notice about these two cards is that both of the figures have spread out, outstretched arms. They're ready to give and ready to receive. Isn't that magical? They're open. They're opening the chest. They're opening up the heart chakra. It's almost like a sense of surrender and a sense of recognizing one's true empowerment. You know, when I do my chants in the morning, I'm quite often doing this with my arms. And when I call my matron into my circle, I'm quite often doing this. expanding my chest cavity. I'm saying yes. I'm saying embody me as I embody you. So that, I think, is where I would like to start. Tearing down the barriers is really about giving yourself space. It's about giving yourself room. So the first thing that I would say is try and find the points in your body where you experience fear and where you're experiencing a sense of being restricted. Because we talk about the emotional body, right? But what we're really saying is the aura, and we're really talking about, you know, that sense of where stuff is stored in the body, where pain is stored in the body. And so I think that might be a place to start, is actually to connect with yourself as a sentient life form, and to go and visit that fear, visit that restriction, visit that sense of being trapped, and actually sit with it and recognize that you can unknot those knots. You can untangle those parts within you. You can work with that stuff. You're absolutely entitled to do that. You're allowed to do that. I think that these two images, they're both about vulnerability. This is about vulnerability. This is about, in order to grasp something or experience something or understand something or obtain something or get where you want to go, you must spread your arms out in surrender. You must expose yourself. You must expose your heart, you know, because it's not a defensive stance like this. And there are cards in the deck that are like this, that are a defensive stance, right? But this is about surrender. This is about owning it. And look at the names of the cards: embrace and spread your wings. So basically what's happened here is you've answered your own question, in a sense, because you've said it's so hard to step outside this cozy cocoon being vulnerable again, which I'm assuming means it's difficult to step outside of my comfort zone, knowing that I'm going to feel vulnerable, knowing that there's going to be a risk of failure, knowing that, you know, there's going to be fear and there's going to be trepidation, there's going to be a little bit of anticipation. I'm going to feel like I'm out there alone, naked. But you've actually solved the equation in your own head, because you know that in order to obtain anything, in order to go after something in life and experience the full majesty of what it is to be alive, you can't stay trapped in that little cocoon. You have to get out there, and you have to feel a little bit naked. You have to do what Megan Watterson called getting spiritually naked. You've got to do that. So you already know that this is a massive rite of passage for you, that if you let yourself be vulnerable and you do that in the service of your vision, then you're already halfway there. You already know that the vulnerability is part of what it takes to live both feet in, to live an engaged life. I felt vulnerable before I started this live stream because I can't edit it. It's just live. I'm just going to be talking live, like, and there's no way of saying, you know, I can't, I've decided not to do that now, I'm going to get rid of it, or I'm going to stop it, or whatever. It's live. And so I felt vulnerable, definitely. There's changes that I'm making to my creative endeavors that I feel vulnerable about right now. There's conversations I need to have with people I love, and I'm going to feel vulnerable, and I'm going to worry about their reaction to those things that I want to say and need to say. Vulnerability is part of what it means to expand, and I think that you already know that, and I think the majesty is that you already know that. You already know that, that it's just part of it. Feeling vulnerable, opening your arms up and saying, okay, I'm ready, let's do this. I'm ready. I'm not protecting myself anymore. I've got no armor on. I'm ready to spread my wings and embrace. I feel like you are already aware that that's what it takes to get further and to go deeper and to expand more. So it's beautiful that you know that. And so now all you need to do is take those first steps. I hope that helps you. I've had several experiences where I thought, what if this happens? And then the thing I was thinking of happened. Do you have any advice on differentiating between intuition and thinking things into reality? Okay. Yeah, I would say differentiating between intuition and thinking things into reality. Well, I would advise you, I don't want to stick on this too long because I want to talk more about the self-love angle, but I would advise you to look into synchronicity and have a look at what that kind of entails, and have a look at studies that have been done into synchronicity. Because really what it is, it's a meaningful randomness. So it's basically that area between wondering if you just did something or predicted something or brought something into being because it was just so dead on, and convincing yourself that it was just a fluke, that it was just a coincidence, that it has nothing to do with anything, and that any idea that it does is some kind of temporary madness. because really it can go either way. You can decide, your belief can be that you know, it should be written off as a coincidence and it's got nothing to do with anything. But if you choose the avenue of belief whereby everything means something, everything is of importance, anything that you turn your attention to, you've turned your attention to for a specific reason, then that's where things get interesting. In fact, Peter J. Carroll, or was it Jan Fries? Oh damn, I'm getting my men mixed up now. Typical. One of them said that that's the first duty of a magician, is to start to see the meaning in everything, start to see everything as something that didn't happen by accident, start to see everything as a message, or everything as something that you brought into fruition, and having a look at the patterns that exist there, seeing it not as like just a load of meaningless crap that, you know, just is thrown together in a pot and doesn't mean anything, but actually seeing the meaning and the majesty in anything, everything, and recognizing that what you focus on the most, you're focusing on for a reason. So I definitely look at synchronicity, and I definitely look into those kinds of ideas. But yeah, let's not kind of delve into that anymore for now. But I've written it down to consider making a video on it at a later date. So hopefully that will help you, because I do want to talk more about magic and more about chaos magic and different ideas like that with my Rambling Witch series as the year goes on. Because when it does get colder, that is kind of what I like to do. Okay, let's have a little look. Some of the, oh blimey, I'm a bit behind. You've been busy, guys. Okay. Rachel says, sometimes grief feels heavy, like it's literally suffocating. Can breaking the silence and speaking about it be an act of self-love? I come from a family where people just didn't talk about things, so it feels like unfamiliar territory. Okay. I think what I would say is that it can be an act of self-love, because acts of self-love are personal and only you get to decide whether or not it expands your sense of self and helps you to come home to yourself or not. Nobody else can sign off on that decision. That is your decision. What I would say though is, when you speak about grief within a family dynamic in which those things are not supported, and in which a great deal of energy is put into building up the wall of silence and avoiding these kinds of topics, it's important that you do so without too much weight of expectation. It's important that you do so fully recognizing that the people that you want to speak to about it may not be ready to hear about it, may not be prepared to support you in breaking your silence. And so it's important to think about what you want to get out of the equation, or what you are envisioning or hoping for. That might seem like tough love, and in a sense it is. I just want you to be really clear on the fact that you may not get what you want out of it, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily the wrong thing to do. It's just about releasing the expectation and knowing why your pure intention is to speak up and speak out to those particular people. You've got to know why it is that you want to do that. You've got to know that speaking your truth in those situations and to those people is the right thing for you, regardless of the outcome. It's the right thing to do, regardless of the outcome, you know? So I think that's where you need to go. And I think it's a very personal journey. It's a personal thing. There have been times in my life where I've spoken out in situations where I knew that it was not going to be appreciated, and in situations where it was ill-advised, where other members of the family or other people in the friendship group told me not to speak out, but I knew that it was what I had to do. I knew that the truth will out and that the authentic thing to do was speak. In other situations, I have said reams and reams and reams worth of stuff and written reams worth of stuff to somebody, and none of it was ever said or ever sent to them. I realized that I could vocalize all of that stuff on my own time and in my own terms, and that the other person or the other people didn't need to be involved, and that there was no point in getting them involved because they live on a different planet to me. They have different priorities, they have a completely different perception of what went on. And I knew that talking about it with them was only going to cause further conflict and further malice and further misery and further pain. So I worked it out with myself. So I've done both. I've been down both roads. And I think it's important for you to recognize that your pure intention is what counts, and recognize that if you are fantasizing about a specific outcome, if you're fantasizing about suddenly these family members opening up their arms and saying, yes, we want to hear all about it, you know, then I would recommend checking in with your pure intention and deciding why it is that you want to do this, because you may not get the response that you want. But it's important for you to know that if you want to do it, it has to be about more than just the response that you're going to get. It has to be about the fact that you know that ultimately it's the right thing to do. I hope that's helped, and it is a very personal journey. Obviously, without knowing the specifics of your situation and without being able to feel what it's like to be you in that situation, I wouldn't be able to make the ultimate call, and I wouldn't make the ultimate call anyway, because it's not my life and that's not my job. But yeah, I do think it's important to check in with expectation and with intention, and to know that you do not always have to speak it out to the person it's about. You don't always have to have that conversation with those people. That's not the only way to heal. But if it's what you feel that you need to do, and if it's what feels right for you, then your truth is wondrous, and your truth may heal far more than you realize. Your truth may heal wider than just in your own soul, but outwards. It might be a ripple effect that changes the dynamic of the family forever in all kinds of wonderful ways you can't know. So I hope that that helps. Okay, oh, this is a good one. Could you please pull a Vintage Wisdom Oracle card for what we need to know for this week of self-love that we are not aware of? I'm curious what you would pull for us. Lisa, I'm curious too. Let's do that. Hang on a moment. Let me just take some water. Gorgeous. I can't believe nearly an hour's gone by already. That's twisted. That's absolutely ridiculous. Consensus reality is really a son of a gun, isn't he? He's a he. Consensus reality is a he. I don't know why. I just feel there's a very masculine vibe. Okay. Don't you love these? Does anybody else just love these so much? They're just beautiful. I did a review. If you've seen these and you're wildly intrigued and you don't know what the hell they are, then I did do a review of the Vintage Wisdom Oracle deck. You can look it up using the search function at the top of my channel. You will see a little magnifying glass. If you stick the words Vintage Wisdom Oracle in there, the first video that comes up will be my review of these puppies. Okay. So, just to reiterate, what we need to know for this week of self-love that we are not aware of. I love that. So the blind spot. What's the blind spot for a lot of us right now? Freedom. What a beautiful card that is, look. That is gorgeous. Love that. Well, I think sometimes when you're going through the motions of taking on these tools and thinking about these things, you don't always have an overriding, pervading sense of how much it's going to give to you and what your life could look like as a direct result of making this commitment and doing this good work. And as much as I say to people, you're doing this great work, and you know, I honor you for showing up, and I honor your journey and all the rest of it, it can be cheap talk when it comes from somebody else. But really checking in with your sense of the freedom that you're giving to yourself as a result of taking on these tools and opening these portals in your mind and potentially shifting your neural pathways is definitely a wondrous thing. Thinking about what it's going to give to you. You'll notice in the background of this card there's a tower, there's a tall tower and turrets and things. And yet this figure, is sat out in the outdoors with a bird, a dove with its wings outstretched. And there's this incredible sense of expansiveness, expanding, filling the space up, owning the space, not hiding, not cowering, not being tucked up away in the tall tower, you know, like the tall tower that princesses end up in fairy tales. The sense of being locked in the tower, being locked inside a persona, being locked inside a role. This is about expanding beyond that and seeing yourself outside of that and giving yourself the chance to really spread your wings and really expand. So maybe the card is trying to say to us that it's important to have a look at when you come up against resistance in your self-love work, when you come up against parts of the content that are challenging for you, when you come up against things that irk your shadow out a little bit in what I'm saying or in what you're reading or in what you're going through in your own journaling. Think about the concept of freedom. Think about why it is that you're doing what you're doing with this good work. What is it that you're really trying to obtain? What is the point? Because as I said in the getting started video at the very beginning of September, it's really easy to drown in a lot of self-development stuff, right? It's easy to just let it like let it get over the top, where you're taking on so many tools and tips and methods and techniques, and you're reading these different authors and you're looking at these different ideas and strategies and philosophies and stuff, but actually thinking about putting it into practice, nailing it down, going into it step by step and experimenting and seeing how those experimentations turn out, that's something that a lot of us bypass, or a lot of us aren't really doing. You know, we take on a lot of information, but how much of it are we really putting into practice? So when you're struggling to put some of the tools into practice, or when you're feeling like, oh God, I just can't be bothered with this anymore, or when stuff comes up in your journaling that you really want to turn away from because it doesn't feel good, think about this card, think about the energy that it holds, think about what you're really giving to yourself when you do these things. This is not just about going through the motions, it's about giving yourself a more expansive sense of what it means to be alive, what it means to live a good life, what it means to live life your way, and what it means to be expansive and to stretch your wings, not to be tucked up in the tower. So I think it's really about thinking about the long term. I don't want to call it a game plan because that seems facetious, but the long term sense of what it is when you're in the trench. Okay, when you're in the trench and bullets are like flying overhead and all you want to do is go home, then it's time to think, why are you fighting this war? What's it all about? PS, I don't really believe in war, but you know what I mean? The personal war, the war within. When you're in the trenches and you can't be bothered and you're just about ready to give the fuck up, then what is it all about really underneath? And I think it's about that, isn't it? Isn't that what it's really about? Especially for those of us who are trying to release like old family dynamics, inherited hang-ups and complexes. We feel enslaved by a past disappointment or a past relationship, something we can't quite shake. We didn't come from a family that supported us. We feel like we're trapped inside what society or what the family wants us to be. And so really when you're in the trenches and you're getting down and dirty and the mustard gas is in your throat, just, I guess, kind of think of that in a way. There's a lot of war analogies for me tonight. I just used a war analogy in my bloody Self-Love Sunday SoundCloud session recording thingy, which isn't up yet. Please don't rush off to SoundCloud to watch it because it's not uploaded yet, because I didn't realise that I need to up my pro plan to unlimited, because I talk a lot and I'm not paying enough to actually, I'm not paying enough to publish all of my talking on SoundCloud anymore, so they need more money from me. So I'll sort that out as soon as I'm finished with this. But yeah, lots of war analogies for me tonight. I may need to go away and analyse that a bit later. Thank you so much, Lisa, for bringing us to that and helping us to check in with that. That's awesome. And I think that really had a lot of new moon energy to it. What is it that we're not seeing? What is it that's not illuminated? I love that. I think that's awesome. I think it's great that that kind of allowed us to connect with the new moon energy. So that's really cool. Okay. What tarot cards would you recommend for self-love work in fall? I find Queen of Pentacles goes well with this time of year. When you say recommend, I don't know if you mean which tarot cards symbolize self-love, or, oh no, okay, so I guess you mean like which cards can you single out from the deck and actually work with and have a look at like how you bond with them and what you think of them and how that applies to self-love kind of thing. I think all four of the queens, of course, because why wouldn't I? Bloody love the four queens. I'm creating an e-zine at the moment, by the way, about the four queens and the energies of the four queens for a secret reason that will be announced later, but it's a free e-zine and I'll let you guys know when it's up. But yeah, the four queens definitely can help us to connect with self-love. I noticed that you mentioned the season, self-love work in fall. I think it's really cool that you mentioned the season, because like I was saying at the beginning of this session, there isn't there this sense of like the moods change with the seasons, and you kind of pick up on different nuances and different themes with regard to what season it is. So for me, I feel like Pentacles are a very full kind of suit. So I would definitely recommend, yeah, that I would definitely agree with you that the Queen of Pentacles is a really good one. I think that fall is about connecting more with the earth for me, because I'm noticing the changes in the weather and I'm smelling the petrichor as the rain falls, and I can smell the earth, and I'm really noticing the cold, and I feel a more visceral sense of the fact that I'm on planet Earth, because when I wake up it's cold in my kitchen and it's cold in my bathroom, and I'm feeling like the inside and the outside have more of a relationship with each other. I feel like I'm much more consciously aware of the elements. I can see my breath in the air when I breathe. you know. So I feel like pentacles are, as a suit, very much connecting us with our body, with our five senses, and also what we're doing about self-love, what we're doing about it. How are we bringing it into tangibility? How are we bringing it into focus? How are we being proactive and doing experiments, experimenting with self-love, experimenting with these tools that we're picking up, actually making something happen that we can see, that there is evidence of. So I think for me, that's the connection between the suit of pentacles and Fool. So I think that's definitely something I would say. Also, check out the three celestial cards in the major arcana: the sun, the moon, and the star. And I would recommend looking at them together as a threesome and then looking at them separately. I feel like the three celestial trumps in the major arcana give us a lot of a sense of how to shine our light in the world, how to own our potential in the world, and how to recognize how to take the lead in our own lives and like actually kind of shine. So for me, you know, in the star, for example, there's a lot of self-care stuff, but there's also a lot of owning your potential, shining brightly, letting yourself shine in your own way. The sun can often be about, you know, connecting with your inner child, connecting with your sense of joy, connecting with what it really means to live an engaged and illuminated life. There's also some suggestions of spiritual realization there, realizations about yourself. And the moon is really about self-talk. In terms of self-love, it would be about your mind and how you're allowing your mind to either overtake you in a negative way or support you in a positive way. So I think those three cards, the celestial trumps, definitely could make a good exploration for Fool for self-love as well. But I definitely feel you with the Queen of Pentacles without a doubt, and I definitely go with you on that. Okay, the next question, Raven Moon. How would you suggest when you have to forgive someone who is a part of your life, such as a spouse, that does not see themselves as having done something wrong and move on from that? I'm not sure if you were here when I was talking about forgiveness before in this live session, but what I said is that from my personal perspective, I don't feel that I need the other person to see themselves as having done something wrong in order to forgive them. Because quite honestly, and I'm thinking about one specific person here, a family member that I have in mind, if I waited for that person to say that they'd done something wrong and to ask me for forgiveness, I think Satan would be ice skating to work by the time that day rolled around. But do I need to forgive that person? Yes. Did I forgive that person? Yes. Was it a process that was complex and tangled and winding? Absolutely. Do I feel that I've fully come to healing now? Yeah, totally. And I don't feel that I needed him to want to be forgiven. I don't feel that I needed him to say he was wrong. That wasn't important to me. I can't afford for that to be important to me. I really can't. Because it's about whether or not I want to carry that baggage, you know. However, earlier in the session, I did talk about the link between forgiveness and reconciliation and the link between forgiving and forgetting. Now, that's a very personal thing, isn't it? When you have a spouse or a friend or a sibling or whatever, and you find yourself in the position of needing to forgive, needing to understand, needing to accept and release, needing to move on from an injury that you feel they've caused you, then you need to look at how you feel about the fact that it may happen again, or the fact that it has happened many times in the past. How do you feel about the general pattern and dynamic of the relationship? Do you find this is something that happens often, that you need to consistently forgive and forget about? Do you find that you're at the end of your tether with forgiving and forgetting about it? Do you feel like something needs to change, something needs to give? You need to reinforce your boundaries, you need to change your boundaries, you need to take a look at where your limitations are. That's the stuff. Because you know, the situation that I was just talking about, where I forgave without necessarily the other person thinking they were wrong, I don't speak to that person anymore at all. I've healed and released completely without reconciliation, because reconciliation would not have been healthy for me mentally, emotionally, spiritually. However, of course, I've also gone through a process of forgiving somebody that was in my life that didn't feel they had anything to be forgiven for, or hadn't done anything wrong or anything like that. And I still, again, I had to do that for myself because I didn't want to carry the baggage. But there was also a sense of needing to assess the situation in that, because, you know, it's okay for you and this person in your life to have a different perspective. It's okay for you and this person to be seeing things from a different angle. But it's not okay for an ingrained unhealthy pattern to continue to play out in your relationship, which does not serve you, which really aggravates you, and which you do nothing about and consistently put up with. So if that's happened, then it's not a simple, straightforward case of two people having a difference of opinion and agreeing to disagree, as it were. Then it's a case of you needing to reassess the dynamic of the relationship as a whole and deciding whether or not it is actually still healthy for you. And if not, do you need to make changes? Do you need to decide that the boundaries need to change? Do you need to talk about ground rules? Do you need to discuss how things are going to be from now on that they weren't before? And that is your responsibility ultimately. That's what you now need to do. If you're going to keep somebody in your life, then I think it's really about asking yourself, is this just a time where me and my spouse are coming from a different angle and we need to just accept that and love each other regardless? Or is this a reflection of something that goes on quite a lot in the relationship that I'm really, really sick of and I need to address? So that's really the question I would ask. Is it an ingrained pattern or is it a one-off? And if it's an ingrained pattern, what does that symbolize about the relationship and what needs to change? And don't start with where your spouse needs to change. Start with what you need to change, what you need to say, what you need to own. You know, don't sit there thinking, well, I don't have to do anything to change, but if only my spouse would do this or agree to do this or think of things this way. Because it's got to be about where you're accountable. You can't ultimately control what your spouse does or does not choose to own up to or change. It's got to be about, what do you need to say? What do you need to take to your spouse as a point of discussion? What rule do you need to change? What have you been doing that you could shift? You know? So yeah, I think that's a super important thing to mention. Cameron, the tarot parlor. Hi, baby. This has been fantastic. I have to dash, but I'm glad I got to stop for a little bit. Looking forward to the next one. Much love all. Mwah! You genius, tarot genius, you tarot genius, you. Excuse me. Okay, let's check this out. Divya, confrontation is tricky for me. It's made some friends estranged, and I've been called dead inside. Ouch. You're not dead inside, babe. You're not dead inside, darling. I feel embarrassed to speak true words to people I care about. Is there a way to have confrontations with myself kindly so I can do the same with others? Well, you know, there you've just said something so wise. You've made the connection between the way you confront yourself and the way that you confront other people. And you've actually said that you need to confront yourself kindly. Have confrontations with myself kindly so I can do the same with others. I love that, because you've recognized that you need to start with yourself. I'm really resisting the urge to start singing Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson now. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. No. But you're starting with yourself, basically. And I think that's something beautiful. Confrontation is tricky. It is. You say here that you feel embarrassed to speak true words to people that you care about. So really it starts maybe with, like, you've made the connection between the confrontations you have with yourself and the confrontations you have with others. Maybe it starts with the words you speak to yourself and the words you speak to others. Maybe if you start to speak truer words to yourself, if you're more authentic with yourself, if you stop allowing yourself to go on the same cycle of negative thoughts, of limiting beliefs, actually start to look at what else is out there, what else is available to you. What else can you say to yourself? What words of love, support, encouragement, illumination can you give to yourself? Maybe if you start there, then you'll start to feel like it's okay to be more authentic with other people and to speak up and to have your voice heard outside of yourself in the external world. So I would definitely focus on that. Have a look at the last few things that you said to yourself. Were they kind? Were they honest? Were they just you cherry picking the evidence that you felt you wanted to highlight? So for example, when you see evidence that you are a certain way, when you see evidence of negative things about yourself, do you highlight that evidence and underline that evidence and take that evidence as true? But when you see evidence of your beauty, your compassion, your kindness, your willingness to learn, your pure potential, your creativity, your sense of connection to the world, do you downplay that evidence? Do you ignore that evidence? Do you see that as not as important as the evidence that you're just an idiot? That's really important to note. What are you doing with that evidence that you are a wondrously complex and gorgeously alive human being with a great take on things, with a pure heart, with a desire to do good on the planet? What you do with that evidence is important. If you file that away to be looked at later, while using the evidence that you're worthless and taking it as given and hanging it on the wall, then that's where you need to begin. Because it's only once you can have a look at the beauty within you and actually speak that to yourself, that you're going to be able to speak out to others in a raw and authentic way. So really, as with so many people, you've answered your own question, honey. You've said that you feel embarrassed to speak true words to people you care about. You want to learn how to have confrontations with yourself kindly so you can do the same with others. So you know that it actually starts within, which is great. It's awesome that you've already recognized that. I'm going to pull a card for you, and I'm going to basically ask my dark mother, my matron, to give you a message that you need right now. But first of all, I'm going to share with you guys a little prayer that I say on every new moon for my matron and for the archetype of the dark goddess. I wrote it myself, and it goes like this. Blessed be the dark mother who whispers her words over my skin and bones, and who lives behind the fury of the sun, beneath the foam of the waves, and within the seed of the seed. And I say that several times. And by the time I'm done saying that, she is at my shoulder. Believe that. Okay. This is your card. Love abounds. And that is meaningful, right? Because I really feel like this is your heart chakra, and these are the rays of communication that are going outwards towards other people. And this eye in the heart is perfect for you. It's perfect because you know that you need to see you and you need to be with you before you can see and be with others in the way that you want to be. And also to remember that confrontation doesn't have to be about separation. It can be about heightened understanding, and it can be about unity if it's constructive. So ask yourself, are you attempting to be constructive in your confrontations with others? And do you expect people to be constructive when they confront you? Because sometimes people talk about confrontation as though it's necessary and it's authentic and it needs to happen. But at the same time, they're not confronting you for a nice reason, or you're not confronting them for a good reason. It's not about building up, it's about tearing down. Confrontation doesn't have to be like that. Two people sometimes do need to go at it with each other. You sometimes do need to go in on someone and they need to go in on you. You need to state your reasons. You need to talk about what's not working. That's healthy and that's human. But always do it from this place. Always do it from a constructive place, and expect others to do it towards you constructively as well. Because if they're not doing it constructively, if they're only doing it to rip a strip off of you, then it's verbal abuse, right? And so ask yourself, how are you going into the confrontation? Are you attempting to salvage something and therefore coming at it from a place of love? Are you attacking the person, or are you attacking what they've done to you? There's a difference between saying you are selfish and saying, in that specific situation, I feel that you behave selfishly because, and this is why. Actually painting someone's entire being with you are selfish, you are lazy, you undervalue me, isn't as productive as saying, let's have a look at these specific situations and I'll tell you why I felt how I felt. So I think it's about ensuring as well that you don't attack the whole person, that you don't confront the very essence of that person, but in fact you confront what they've said or what they've done or what they've failed to say or do. Specifics, right? Because that's where it's coming from, a place of desire to build, desire to recognize the strong foundation of all human connections. It's not about tearing down, and it's about knowing that you don't have to listen to someone like tear you down either. You can expect confrontation to be constructive. You are allowed to request that. You are entitled to request that confrontation be constructive. I hope that helps. Okay. I'm going to move around because there's quite a few comments now, and I want to make sure that I get to as many people as I can. I hope that this has been helpful for people. I can only hope that it has. Yeah, you know, that's all I can really hope, that I've done as well as I can. I'm not going to be able to answer everything, so I'm going to try and go with the things that I feel are most related to self-love, because I think that I just want to give my attention to that principally. I'm reading through some things now. Okay. I feel that forgiveness is intrinsically linked with boundaries, and I absolutely believe that you can forgive, but hold your personal boundaries to prevent further injury. Making that connection has been huge in my own journey of self-love. Cameron, you're so right, hon. It's true. Forgiveness is intrinsically linked with boundaries, and you can hold your personal boundaries and prevent further injury and still forgive and release. And it's like I said earlier in this session, I feel very similarly about forgiveness as I do about anger, in the sense that I don't feel that I need to direct my anger at the person that's hurt me. I feel that I can process anger without ever speaking to the person that hurt me. I may not necessarily always feel that that's the right way. I may need to express to that person, especially if I want to keep them in my life, because we need to have an honest discussion about what went down there, what actually happened. So it's not like you always have to avoid having the conversation. But, you know, what about if you need to process anger towards an abuser or towards a deceased parent or towards someone you don't speak to anymore? Are you just not going to do that because you can't pick up the phone or you can't have a discussion with them one-on-one? No, you still need to process the anger. And I feel like forgiveness is very similar. I don't need to involve the other person, and the other person doesn't have to be sorry. I forgive, and I forgive them for not being sorry. That's part of what I forgive them for. I forgive them for causing me pain from a conscious place, and then not being sorry for it and feeling like what they did was okay. You know, I forgive them for that. So yeah, that's part of it too. Someone's asking if bibliotherapy is a form of self-love. Oh yeah, absolutely, I completely agree. Any reviews coming up soon? Yeah, I want to start a new series where I talk about books. I really do. I don't get a huge amount of time to read. I must admit that. I don't read as much as I did in former years. I work very hard, and I don't always have a huge amount of time to read. I try and get a couple of pages done before bed, but sometimes that isn't possible. I try and do a little bit on a Saturday. But yeah, I don't get the time to read that I would like. I do definitely want to start a series where I talk about books and talk about what I've been dipping into and what's in my little basket. I've got a little plastic book basket where I keep stuff that I rotate and that I just read little bits. I'd love to talk to you guys more about books, because I know so many of you are readers and so many of you just love no, I'm not excluding Kindle users here, okay, but I just love a good book, a real book, you know. But I do think electronic books are great and better for the environment ultimately and so on. But I mean, I don't really buy first-hand books a lot anyway. I love buying second-hand books. So anyway, yeah, bibliotherapy, I'm a bibliophile. Book reviews are coming, absolutely. This is the part where you have to just sit here if you're not, or even if you are watching it live, you have to sit here and like wait for me. Somebody said that earlier questions pushed your question down the page. I'm trying to find your question. I won't be a second. I'll try and find it and bring it up, and I'll give it my full attention. I don't really see it, the regular nonsense. I don't actually see it. Sorry. It is not here. If you could post it again, I'll answer it. Mythic silence. I'm trying to think of success in a more expansive way, but the necessity of financial independence and other traditional standards for functioning in society makes it difficult to not feel like a failure. Any tips for reconciling this? The necessity of financial independence and other traditional standards. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that the necessity for material security and the necessity for paying bills and keeping a roof over your head and so on, you can see that as its own animal. You can see that as something that requires a sense of responsibility, obligation to yourself, and a sense of developing strategies for doing that and making that happen. But that doesn't have to be your intrinsic sense of what success means. Those two things don't have to be you know, they can I don't want to say they can be mutually exclusive. Like, for example, okay, first of all, I split my life into different aspects of my life. Okay, so when I'm looking at success, I might look at what success means to me in terms of material and financial security, but that won't be overall what my overarching sense of success is. It's just what success means to me at this point in my life with regard to that one aspect of my life. You know, so it's okay to kind of divide and conquer, if that makes sense. You don't have to see financial security and financial independence or material abundance as the overarching meaning of success or the overarching energy of success, but you can look at the area of finances in your life and decide, what does success mean to me with regard to that? And decide then, what does success mean to me spiritually? What does success mean to me creatively? What does success mean to me with regard to my relationship with my body? Okay, so first of all, divide and conquer. But if we're talking about financial independence and material security, then I would recommend focusing on success in relation to that from the heart center. What you feel about it, what kind of emotions you connect with it. Because I'll tell you what, there's absolutely nothing successful whatsoever about having a big old pile of bricks and a lovely car in the driveway, but wanting to kill yourself in the morning. It hasn't worked, has it? You know what I mean? It hasn't worked, chicken. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, do you know what I mean? So essentially what I would say is, when you look at that aspect of your life and what success means to you in that area, think about how you want to feel, what it needs to mean to you at the most profound level. And that's what I do. I mean, I mess around with numbers to an extent, and I mess around with like visualizing what I want my ultimate apartment to be. But most of the time I just think about how I want to feel about money, what kind of, where I'm coming at it from in my soul, and how to make my peace with the fact that I need to earn a crust. How is that going to feel okay by me? How am I going to feel enriched by that? You know, and I think that is where you defy the current paradigm or the mainstream paradigm or whatever. When we decide, I don't need to show up for your idea of what financial success is. I don't need to be here for that, okay? I'm thinking about what it means to me, how I define success in terms of money and materiality. And the first thing to do is divide and conquer. And I actually drew this while I was telling you to divide and conquer. This kind of looks like a wheel of the year, or a cake, or a pizza, depending on how hungry you are as you're watching this. You'd be like, I don't see a wheel of the year, I see a pizza, which is fine. But yeah, basically divide and conquer. So what I mean by that is the material stuff, that isn't the whole pizza. That's one slice. And you can look at what success means to you in terms of that one slice. But then there's all this other stuff too, that you can also decide, what does success mean to me there? What's going on there that I can get into, that I want to kind of go for, that means success to me? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is to remember that you don't have to show up for somebody else's idea of what it means to be financially or materially successful. I don't show up for that. Why should you show up for that? You know, you need to create your own idea. So first of all, make sure that you know that it's not the whole pizza, it's one piece of the pizza. And enjoy defining what success means to you in all the other areas as well, because it's not just about money. That's just the one aspect of this big pizza. It's a large pizza, okay? So it's like 10 slices. So just sit down, draw a pizza, write money on one slice, and then choose what the other 9 slices are. Because I think that can really, we amplify money because a lot of other people do, but it's only one part of the pizza. So yeah, there we go, a pizza analogy. It's better than a war analogy, I suppose. So let's have a look at this one. I'm going to keep trying to move around. I've only got half an hour left now, so I'm going to try and keep moving around and try and like get people's questions answered or comments read. It seems every time I assert my personal boundaries, everyone gets offended. Any advice on asserting yourself with kinder words? When I soften my words, it doesn't seem to get through. Okay, I feel that. I do feel that. So really, this is about communication. And it's kind of about you letting people know that you're serious about your boundaries without making them feel hurt. First of all, I would say what I said to somebody else just recently in this session. Have a look at where you are directing criticism at a person versus what a person has done in a specific situation. So if someone's overstepping your boundaries, rather than saying, you overstep my boundaries, you're invasive, and you know, you pry, and you're, you know, you've got a lot of destructive behaviors or whatever. It's like where you're actually kind of dissecting their character, assassinating their character. Try switching it to giving examples of specifics and talking about specific things that they've done in specific situations so that it doesn't feel so personal. I think it's really important. I notice when I'm saying to, like, when I've had heated discussions or heated arguments with my boyfriend, I've said to him on a couple of occasions, like, you're so selfish. And that's such bullshit. He's not so selfish. So then I rein that back in and I'm like, I didn't mean that. That's not what I meant. I meant yesterday when you didn't do that thing that we'd agreed upon or whatever, I felt that was really selfish because it wasn't as if you used your time in a constructive way. Otherwise, you just wanted to do what you wanted to do and you forgot all about me. That's way more constructive, right? That's way more like, you know, in the swim of what it means to have a constructive conversation. So it's about being constructive. If you feel that you need to change the rules in a connection, or you need something to be understood by somebody so that the relationship can flourish, stress the fact that you're saying it so you can help the relationship to flourish. So instead of softening your words, because I hear what you're saying, when you soften your words, it doesn't get through. It seems that you're going for an approach that actually just makes people feel like you're not serious. I totally understand that. But before you say what you need to say in this very assertive and straightforward manner, I would recommend stressing why you're saying it. And when you stress why you're saying it, that's where things can go to love. That's where it can be about love. You can say, as I often start, you know, when I want to say something strong, when I want to stress that a relationship or a friendship is not where it needs to be and I need to get it back on track, I quite often say, I'm saying this because I love you and I want our relationship to flourish. And I know that if this pattern keeps going on and I don't say anything about it, then our relationship's going to suffer. And you mean a lot to me. I love you and I don't want that to happen. And you're probably completely unaware anyway of what you're doing that's aggravating me. So I want to put it out there now so that, you know, we can really ensure that our relationship does flourish and does carry on. Because I just feel like, you know, if I let it brew and boil and I don't say anything, then ultimately it will be my fault if the relationship goes awry. And so I need to take ownership. Like, I need to say this because I love you. I'm asserting my boundaries because I love you. I'm asserting my boundaries in the interest of the connection, so that we can continue to be friends and we can continue to be in each other's lives. So I would recommend, rather than actually softening your words, just make sure that you're not attacking the person. You're being specific about what it is that you're really talking about, the situation or the behavior that you're talking about, rather than attacking or dissecting the whole person. And also, before you get into whatever grievance you have, make sure that you let that person know that you're saying it from a place of love. You're saying it to be constructive, not destructive. Okay? And then the final thing that I would say to you is, ultimately, once you've done that, if you know that you're speaking from a place of pure intention and you're not speaking to be aggressive or to hurt the other person or to knock them down, you're saying it for the sake of the relationship. If you know that in your heart and they still respond badly, that is not your responsibility. You cannot take control over how they respond. Unfortunately, there's no lasso mechanism where you can grab their overwrought emotional response and rein it back in and say, hey, dude, I love you. There's no need to react like that. God. Unfortunately, ultimately, people just sometimes react in a way that is completely out of alignment with our original intention for saying what we had to say. And you need to accept that that is a possibility. But if you put those two tips into practice that I've just suggested, then the likelihood of that happening will lessen, I'm quite sure. I hope that helps. Okay. Wendy says, how do I get rid of the feeling of not being good enough and the symptoms it brings, like the need to compete? Not feeling good enough is a childhood injury caused by my mother and deeply ingrained in me. I really need to let it go. Okay. What I'm going to suggest to you is something that I actually talk about in my latest Self-Love Sunday SoundCloud audio file, which is going to be up at some point tonight. It was supposed to be up earlier, but there was a situation with SoundCloud, but I'm getting it sorted out now, Wendy. Okay, so let me just give you like a little kind of exclusive preview of what I said in that SoundCloud session, and then maybe in an hour or so you can have a look on my SoundCloud, which is linked in the doobly-doo underneath every single one of my YouTube videos. So just go there and find it. Oh, it might be linked under this one. I don't know. But yeah, basically I do talk about something to do with this in that. So let me just give you a kind of preview of what I said. First of all, you've identified that you don't feel good enough because of a childhood injury caused by your mother, and it's deeply ingrained in you. Perfect, because you understand where you've gotten your unhelpful core belief from. Your core belief is that you're not worthy. and you understand the stem of your core belief, which is great. Now you need to look at the rules that you've put into place, the assumptions, the compensatory assumptions, which have led to rules that you live your life by. If your unhelpful core belief is that you are not worthy, then the compensatory assumption, the compensatory rule that you've put into place is something like, I need to compete with others and win so that nobody, including myself, really actually gets a sense of how truly unworthy I am. So you've created a rule and probably a set of sub-rules that rule your world. And the rules are to do with competing, making sure that you feel and seem better than, seeing other people as your competitors, and feeling like you manage to get a sense of temporary worth from overcoming them or tearing them down or being better than them. These are the rules that you set for yourself. It's time to break those rules, and you break those rules through tiny little experiments. Okay, so the next time you're in a situation where you realize that you want to compete, and you are tempted to compete, you're tempted to be better than, you're tempted to rip a strip off of, you're tempted to, you know, like climb to the top of the mountain and like throw crap at people from the top of the mountain, identify that, check in with that, and get your scientist head on. Embody the archetype of the scientist and say to yourself, this is an interesting time to have the experiment where I break the rule, the internal rule that I've set for myself as a result of my rotten core belief. So if the rule is that I need to compete with this person now in order to obtain my temporary sense of self-worth, then breaking the rule would be very much about refraining from doing that and seeing what happens. Letting that person be who they be and me being who I be, and just chilling and just seeing us both as equals and not allowing myself to succumb to that competitive paradigm, and let me see what happens. Because do you know what? These rules that we make for ourselves, we convince ourselves that they're the only avenue available to us. We absolutely convince ourselves beyond any shadow that these rules are what is propping up the fragile fabric of our entire reality, and that if we don't follow the rules that we've set for ourselves, then everything's just going to come crumbling and tumbling down. And that ain't so, babe. That ain't so. You can break these rules, or at least bend them, anytime you like. And when you do that, you see your empowerment, you take the lead in your life, and it's so essential and it's so intense and wondrous. And so I would definitely say to you, have a look at the little rules that you've put into place for yourself about competing with people and all the rest of it, these little ways that you think you need to obtain or claw back some sense of worth, and start breaking those rules. Start seeing what happens. Experiment. Just be like, hold your horses there, sugar. You're not going to compete this time. You're not going to go down that road. You're going to hang back and try something else and see what happens. And once you see what happens, your whole world opens up, and it's just magical. It's absolutely majestic. I'm excited for you. From now on, your job is to adopt the archetype of the scientist, see what happens, experiment, find other roads, break your rules. If your rules are not expansive, if your rules are restricting you, break them. And I would definitely recommend as well going over to SoundCloud in about an hour's time and have a look for my most recent Self-Love Sunday SoundCloud audio file and listen to that, because I talk much more in depth about this concept, and it is a cognitive behavioral therapy concept, and I put a little bit of spiritual flavor into it, and it all goes quite well. So hopefully that will be a really useful tool for you too. Is it just me, or are work with self-love and shadow work connected? I keep slipping into what I see as shadow work all the time during this month. However, I don't mind it. Molly, they're connected. They're absolutely connected. And I'm not surprised that you brought this up, because I had this really weird witchy feeling that somebody was going to bring that up. I just had this feeling like that somebody was going to mention that, because they are very much connected. Absolutely. Because shadow work is a self-loving act. You know, because shadow work is about recognizing everything about yourself that is the case and embracing it all and being cool with it all. But shadow work is also very much about intention. So when it comes to self-love is a lot about self-acceptance, right? So if you look at the shadow as a bunch of stuff that you're not very proud of, ingrained patterns that that really screw with your life, characteristics that keep getting in the way of you living an engaged life or having fulfilling relationships, negative self-talk, your fears, your insecurities, your desires to have one up on other people, whatever it is, the stuff you don't really want to look at. If you go into shadow work with the intention of trying to bypass that stuff, with the mentality of, well, I see that and that's part of me, and now that it's part of me, I can accept it, and if other people don't accept it, then they can just sod off. If you come at it from that angle, then you're only keeping yourself more stuck. The idea with shadow work is the intention behind it. It's only self-loving if you have that intention to see what's going awry so that it no longer controls you. Witness it in yourself so that you can find ways of making better decisions, so that those parts of yourself don't have the run of you, you know. So shadow work is not about carving yourself into this lovely perfect shape, and I know you're already aware of that, so I don't need to teach you how to suck eggs. The shadow work isn't about that, obviously. Shadow work is about seeing whatever is the case, because when you don't see something fully, it gets control over you. It controls you. Lots of neuroses build up around it, lots of complexes build up around it. It starts to rule you. It starts to come and pull the rug out from under you. When you see it fully and you witness it in the full light, then it doesn't have control over you anymore. It's more of a part of you that you're aware of. You're not going to beat yourself over the head with it. You're not going to, berate yourself for it. But when it does come along, you're going to have these tools in place to help you to make a better decision, to not allow it to like override, and to distract you from what it is that you're doing. So that's the point of it. So I would say, in order for shadow work to be self-loving, you need to see it as something that you're approaching with the intention of consciousness, with the intention of self-awareness, and with the intention of being able to make better decisions and create a better sense of what you can do with your life, and actually to move towards self-actualization, which is where you are the best self that you can be. You are the most engaged and alive self that you can be. If one focuses on shadow work as a way to say, I accept my flaws, I am lazy, I am selfish, I am somebody that has avoidance patterns, and that's just who I am, and I just love myself regardless of that. I think that's absolutely a choice that you could make, but I don't feel like it's really what shadow work is for, and I don't think it's how it's used most productively at all. Shadow work isn't about avoidance and bypassing and looking at what's going wrong and saying, I don't need to deal with that because it's part of me, so sod it, it's part of me and I accept it. It's not about that at all. It's about using what you find, and that's where it becomes self-loving. So yes, there are definitely connections, because in order to love yourself all the way through, you naturally have to look at the bits, or you feel drawn to look at the bits that you don't like, that you don't love, that you hate, or you really feel awkward or icky or embarrassed about, the parts of yourself that you resent. Of course, you're looking at those parts and you're you're unearthing that stuff. And so, yes, that is shadow work, but it's about intention. And the way to make shadow work self-loving is to recognize why you're doing it, why you're bringing that stuff to the surface, and what shadow work leaves on the table for you. If it's just about I am somebody with avoidance patterns who procrastinates, and I have poor time management, and I speak really bluntly to people and make them feel like crap, but that's just who I am and I love myself as I am, then we've stopped short of the actual meat and potatoes of shadow work. We're just feasting on the junk food, and we're going to end up back where we started. So it's about intention. If the intention is there, then yes, absolutely, self-love and shadow work are connected. And I've always said that shadow work is a self-loving act. So that's definitely something that I would say. And it's not just you. These two things do go hand in hand, absolutely. Okay, next. I see people, including myself, being so unnecessarily harsh to themselves in a way that they wouldn't be with other people. We know how we should be treated, so how can we start to treat ourselves like a close friend instead of an enemy? Thank you, lovely. I think that is one of the most beautiful things, actually, the idea of making a rule for yourself that you're not going to say something to yourself that you wouldn't say to another person. The first thing to recognize is what happens to yourself, your life, your day, your relationships with others when you give yourself positive self-talk, when you encourage, nurture, and support yourself, versus what happens to your day, your life, your relationships with others when you berate yourself, criticize yourself, mock yourself, and say nasty things to yourself. Because the proof is in the pudding, the evidence is clear. When I'm lovely to myself, when I encourage and support myself, when I get behind my choices, when I help myself to be emboldened and enlivened, I have a better day. I have a greater sense of what's possible. I get more done. I'm more productive. But the thing that's really important to me about it, when I'm nice to myself, I'm nicer to others. I'm more tolerant of others. And it's hard for me to be tolerant of others sometimes. because of the way that I am, you know. Like I was just saying to Molly about shadow work, I have accepted a lot of my complexes and my neuroses with regard to my relationships with others, and now that I see them, I can consciously turn the tide on them. And one of the things that I've learned is that the nicer I am to myself, the more tolerant and the more accepting I am of others, and the more I'm patient with others, and I give others a chance to speak, and I give others a chance to say their piece without talking over and without shouting down. And I try to understand that people have different perspectives. If I'm kind to myself, if I've got that internal starting point, then that stuff radiates. That stuff fucking ripples out into the universe. And that's when I am truly a witch. That is when the word is all over me like water. I'm truly a witch in that moment because I'm radiating it outwards. It's got to start from here. When I'm being mean to myself, when I'm berating myself, when I'm saying, oh, you bloody idiot, you've done that again, you silly cow, I'm far more likely to snap at somebody else. I'm far more likely to have less tolerance for other people. So you asked, you know, how can we start to treat ourselves like a close friend instead of an enemy? I would think about how it affects your relationships with others when you treat yourself as an enemy, and how does it affect your day? How does it affect your sense of what it's possible to do, and how it's possible to help other people, and how it's possible to make art, and how it's possible to love, and how it's possible to have a decent spiritual practice? Have a look at the proof that's in the pudding when it comes to positive versus negative self-talk. Because, you know, when you allow yourself to expand, when you allow yourself to drop into your heart, beautiful things happen. You can be a far more wondrous version of yourself. You can give so much more. You can be so much greater. And it starts from here. So I'd start to think of it as a duty almost. And I say this quite a lot to parents. When parents say things like, well, I feel guilty for having my own life, you know, I feel guilty for making art, I feel guilty for dropping the kids off once a week at my mother's so I can go to meditation, I feel like I'm not, you know, fulfilling my mother role when I'm doing that. I always say to them, I'm like, well, what do you think you'd be like as a mother or father or carer of anyone if you didn't have those times for yourself? Would you be able to care as much as you do? Would you be able to pay attention as much as you do? Would you protect and defend as vehemently as you do? Would you be able to listen to your child's problems? You know, would you be able to be there for them really? No, because your own tank isn't anywhere near full. You're running on fumes, honey. So why do you think you're going to be able to make a difference and be the parent that you want to be when you're not giving yourself anything? So I think essentially we need to think of it as a duty. I see loving myself and caring for myself as a duty so that I can then go on and love and care for others and give of myself as a spiritual counselor, as a tarot reader, as a friend, as a partner. So I do see it as a duty, and I think that's maybe where you need to take it from, the sense that it's incredibly well evidenced that if you're nice to yourself, you can be nicer to others and you can make a difference more in the lives of others. Oh, I'm losing my voice. Can you imagine just talking solidly for this long? Okay. Thank you. I'll give that a go. Do give that a go. Absolutely. Self-love is the key to processing sadness for me. Any thoughts on self-love and sadness? Yeah, feeling your feelings. I think that's a great question, actually. Feeling your feelings. I think that when I often say, right, that self-love isn't a lavender scented candlelit bath. And that might sound really facetious and a little bit like bitchy, but it's intended to be purposefully hard hitting. And I'll explain what it means. What I mean is self-love is not about being able to give yourself little acts of self-care when times are good and having that be enough for you. Having a lavender scented candlelit bath is absolutely a self-loving, self-caring act, and it's part of the process. But when somebody comes to self-love thinking that that's what they need to do in order to like obtain that daily practice and to drop into their heart and know what it really means to love themselves, then I despair, because that's really just the surface layer, right? For me, self-love is what I turn to, what I have, what is in me when everything else has gone into the biggest steaming pile of shit imaginable. Self-love is me lying on the kitchen floor with no lights on and no heating in the freezing cold when the man that I loved for 4.5 years left me for another woman, and I sobbed in the dark in the fetal position. That, to me, was self-love. To be with myself in that moment, to refuse to abandon myself in that moment, to talk to myself in that moment, to feel my feelings in that moment. That, to me, is what self-love is. So yes, it's nice to have a candlelit bath, and it's nice to do those things for yourself, you know, give yourself a facial and help yourself to be in your body and experience your five senses. Absolutely, that's part of it. Absolutely, a lot of different things are part of it. But to know that you are not jumping ship and abandoning yourself when you really are in so much fucking pain that you feel like you don't want to wake up. I'm not saying I ever got to that point with regard to this man, because I don't think I ever felt suicidal, but I felt pretty bad. I considered taking a blade to my arms for the first time in a very long time. When you like recognize that, you know, you're there for yourself, then you're there for yourself in that moment, that is huge. That is really what self-love is. And so yeah, it's about feeling your feelings, it's about letting yourself be sad, definitely. So I would definitely say that. I don't know whether or not I have lost the connection. It's definitely gone very sketchy. Yeah, I'm not sure whether or not she can talk or not.